I do the same.
And we'll just edit out anything that's not. In fact, hang on a second.
I am Chris. I am. So yeah, again, Chris, it's a great honor actually speaking with you. Let me try to introduce you to the people who are not familiar with you, right? So you're born actually in Southeast London.
Yeah. Born in Southeast London. I joined the British Royal Marines when I was 18. Served in the Northern Ireland conflict. Did Arctic warfare training up in Norway. And then I was part of a specialist security detachment on board an aircraft carrier for a year. So I got to sail all around the world, having a fantastic experience. Left the Marines to run a business that I'd started part-time. It had become incredibly popular in Hong Kong. And at the time I left, or when I put my notice in the Marines, we were turning over about $100,000 a month. So I put my 18 months notice in, left to go to Hong Kong. And by the time I did, my business had all just collapsed. It wasn't my fault. It was the company that I was marketing products for, they had an office in Causeway Bay in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
They couldn't bring out good enough products fast enough to supply the growing demand. And as such, I ended up in Hong Kong, like with no business, no Marines career, obviously anymore. I'm literally stood in Central District going, what do I do? And as I'm sure you know, within 6 or 7 months, I was chronically addicted to crystal methamphetamine, which they call ice in Hong Kong or Bing in Cantonese.
Yeah.
And when I became addicted to that drug, I entered something called psychosis.
Yeah.
Which is it's like a form of schizophrenia or mental illness. And to make things more interesting, I ended up taking a job in Wan Chai in one of the nightclubs there that in my book I call Club Nemo. Anybody who's familiar with Hong Kong probably knows the place I'm talking about. I won't say the name. And again, this is run by the 14K, who are one of the world's biggest triad brotherhoods. And I was a doorman. That was the limit of my involvement, but I still got to see some things that most people probably wouldn't know go on in Hong Kong, even if they've lived there 20 years, or that's my experience from what people tell me.
Yeah. So Chris, it's a super interesting story, right? But what made you join the Marines, the Royal Marines Commando? What made you decide joining them?
It was a combination of both timing, being directionless in life, and being a bit of we use the expression angry young man, but that doesn't mean like I was violent, although I probably have been violent too many times in my life. What it means is I left school, I had no career, I did not know what I wanted to do. I tried a few things, they didn't work. I tried to get into the Air Force and they didn't want me. And then a friend, I was living homeless in my car at the time, and a friend bet me that I couldn't join the Royal Marines.
Oh.
And he had just joined. So it's a very tough 3-day course just to get into training in the Marines, right?
Okay, yeah.
And he'd done this 3-day course. They put you through all kinds of extreme physical activity and tests. swimming tests, like you have to fall backwards off the high diving board, all this kind of stuff. When he said I couldn't do it, then I'm, nobody tells me what I can and can't do, right? So I said, yes, I can. And I went to the recruiting office and joined up. And that's how I joined. I wasn't from a military family.
No.
I only tried to join the Air Force because I sort of saw it as a technical career as opposed to being a killing machine.
Yeah.
But there I was. I ended up going to the Commando Training Centre because British Royal Marines wear the green beret, the same as your commandos.
Yeah. And
there I was with 8 months of training, and then straight out to the Northern Ireland conflict.
So what's the dropout ratio for the 3-day training? Is that substantial? How many people actually succeed in joining the Marine?
Okay, so for every 100 people that go to the recruiting office, probably 30 get sent for the potential Royal Marines course, the 3 days.
Yeah.
On that 3 days, if you start with, let's say, 15 people, through a combination of failure, injury, people deciding this is not for me, or people just not being good enough, either mentally, physically, or knowledge-wise, you're going to end up with about three people out of that 15.
Oh, wow.
It might be more. Some courses might be 6, but it can be as low as 2 people.
Yeah.
Then out of those 2 people that enter training, if we take those 2 people, let's say up to 50, let's count them as 50 now. That's your troop that when they start, by the time you get to the end, you have about between 15 and 20 left. That's called original members. And out of the other 50, most will either decide it's not for them, get injured and have to leave, not be good enough and have to leave, or they pass out with another troop, having maybe spent time in the remedial unit for injuries, right?
Okay.
And so out of the 50 that start, 15 will finish with the original troop, and another 10 guys will come through the other troops. So about half of the people that finally get there.
Okay. So how do you look back on these days? And are there any elements during training you're still benefiting from today?
It's a very ambiguous question to answer, Bob. We often ask ourselves, did we have this commando spirit before we joined? Or did the Marines nurture it when we were in there?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a bit of combination of both, probably, like a lot of things in life.
Yeah.
I take the pride with me. I was from a broken home, and I was told I was a failure by the education system, by the Air Force, by people in my family, and by society, because we only recognize people that make £1 million in this crazy, this crazy thing called society. And even more so when I was young, there was a big focus on, are you a doctor, a lawyer, or, this kind of, doctor, lawyer, or something in, at this kind of high academic, allegedly academic level, right?
Yeah.
So I'm proud of what I achieved, getting the green beret. That's the hardest military training in the world, the hardest basic training. I take a lot of the don't mess around. There's one way to do something, and that's the way you do it. But then again, dare I say, my father's a bit like that, so I probably maybe got that from him, right?
You got it most probably in the genes then, I guess, but then you developed it during training,
Yeah.
yeah. So okay, cool. So moving to Hong Kong, I guess that was in the early 90s, right? Flying on Kai Tak, I guess that's already an experience. Very rare, seldom people experience that. How was that? Was that the first time for you as well in Hong Kong? And
it was the third time I'd been in Hong Kong.
Okay.
In the military, you could get something called indulgence flights.
Yeah.
And that is where they would book 40 seats with British Airways on every single flight.
Okay.
They'd book more during school holidays. And that is for servicemen flying back and forward from the UK. Service personnel, I should say now.
Yeah.
And if those seats weren't filled, you could go on a 2-day waiting list, like a 2 days notice waiting list. And they would call you and say, Marine Thrall, we've got you a seat to Hong Kong tomorrow night. Can you get to Gatwick Airport? It's going to cost you £40. So £40 is what, about 60 US dollars.
Yeah.
It was absolutely nothing. And if you couldn't get a flight back, which I never did, you could go to Cathay Pacific and show your ID card, and you get a flight, a standard price of £199. So for £250, I flew to Hong Kong 3 times.
Okay. So
flying into Kai Tak, like you said, wow.
Yeah.
Just like, wow. Woof, down into the skyscrapers.
Yeah.
Landing on the strip. I think it either facing the ocean, or if the wind was in the wrong direction, facing the other way.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I moved to Hong Kong in 06, 07. So obviously flying onto Lantau Island is less spectacular than flying on Kai Tak. But I actually ended up working close to that previous airport, Kai Tak, in Kwun Tong, where they nowadays they built, I'm sure you know it, is the cruise terminal they built on that same location. So yeah, so but I've seen the pictures, right, where you see the big aircrafts, touching the rooftops in Kowloon. And
there was a really great video on YouTube. I don't know if it's still there. I managed to get a copy of it. It is just, you feel like you are in that cockpit with the pilots. It's all the music playing in the background. It's dun 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 dun, and the plane going through the skyscrapers. It's I mean, the feel of Hong Kong back then, Tom, was different.
Yeah. And people were still allowed to smoke. So you got the smoke screen as well, and the music in the background, and I guess it was a spectacular experience. So did you love Hong Kong from the very first moment? The pace of life, and the number of people, the smell of stinky tofu. I mean,
I loved it when I lived there. So that's the third time that I was in Hong Kong. I've actually been there 4 times, I should say, because I went there for my book launch in 2011. So I kind of got to see the new Hong Kong under Chinese rule.
Yeah.
The first time, two times I was there, it was all a bit overwhelming. I'd never traveled with a guidebook back in the day because I didn't know you could buy guidebooks. I know that might sound stupid, but I didn't know you had things like The Lonely Planet and such publications. So I would just get a flight somewhere in the world and put my backpack on and a pair of shorts and just go off and meet people and drink a lot of beer. And so, I mean, when you land at Kai Tak, you drive through Kowloon. It just looks like one crazy big mad metropolis. You go under the harbour tunnel and you arrive in Central. It just looks like one big mad metropolis, right?
Yeah.
And the restaurants are all very kind of glamorous and maybe not massively expensive, but you know. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually guilty because I used to eat McDonald's back when I was a teenager. Obviously, like all self-respecting adults, I don't do that now. And so I would just find a McDonald's to eat because I was too confused. I didn't know how to order on the Chinese menu and this, right? I'm trying to say I was doing all those things that you do when you're a kid and you don't know how to appreciate culture properly.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one thing what was most probably familiar, right? The yellow sign with the burgers on the menu. So
Yeah.
so you're an adventurous person now as well. You're in the outdoors. You're walking 1,000 miles. Did you enjoy the outdoors in Hong Kong as well? Did you go out hiking? And do you have any particular hike you enjoyed the most?
Well, it's funny, that first trip to Hong Kong. So I don't know how many of your listeners and viewers will relate to this, but I was in the crush that took place on New Year's Eve in 1990. I think it was 1992. I was in a bar called Mad Dogs in Lan Kwai Fong. And when I came outside the bar, I'm not sure if it was that street or the street over. I think it's De Aguilera Street. I might be wrong on that. There was 20 people dead in the street, and they'd rushed outside the pubs and clubs at midnight to, you know, clap the new year in, and
They're crushed.
a big panic and a big crush took place. And because I stayed in the bar, I was so drunk with it. I was drinking with a guy from the Navy. We just came out after, and like I say, there's 20 people dead in the road. There's police cars, there's ambulances, there's shoes like you see on the TV, literally shoes all down the middle of the street where this panic had taken place. And either a couple of days later or a couple of days before, your most famous gangster, Tooth Dog, whose name, his real name, Yip Kai Fun, right? Hong Kong's most famous ever gangster. He used to walk into the jewelry shops in Hong Kong with an AK-47 Kalashnikov rifle with his gang, and they would just rob that shop of all the Rolexes and the gold. And then they'd go to the shop next door, do the same thing.
Yeah.
On this occasion, he had a shootout. It was either with the police or the security guards. They had a big shootout in the street. I think at least one person was shot. I think they were shot dead. So that was that happened to me either a few days later or it was a few days before, right? So this is my first experience of Hong Kong.
Oh, wow.
Already I'm realizing this place is the craziest place I've ever been. Now I've lived, worked and traveled in 80 different countries. I still will tell you Hong Kong in China is the craziest place I've ever been. As far as getting to the outdoors, no, I lived a very standard life while I was in Hong Kong. When I would work, initially I worked during the day in some of the crazy companies over there, and that's just a whole nother thing again. And in the evening, I would go home. I would sit on a park bench near my block of flats, which was in Mongkok initially, and I would just sit there on my own, smoking dope, just thinking about the world. I didn't really drink much alcohol back then. I'd go to Chungking mansions and I'd find the triads there, and I'd score my weed or my squidgy black off them. Or I'd go to Kowloon Park and just sit in the park. That's what I did. And until I got introduced to crystal meth, then I would do a similar routine. It's just I would stay in my flat, getting really high and doing a lot of drawings and writing songs and stuff. You know, it made me really understand that we're all very creative as human beings. All the stuff the school system told me I was rubbish at, I'm suddenly learning, no, I'm okay, you know, I'm okay.
Yeah, you got talents.
Yeah, exactly. Then the second half of my time in Hong Kong, I started working in the nightclub area as a doorman.
Mm.
And I had a brief period for 3 weeks as a DJ in mainland China. And all of that time, I'm taking crystal meth every day.
Yeah.
And I would work in the evening, so nightclub doorman down in Wan Chai. At the end of my shift, I would go across to the Big Apple, which is now called another name, I believe. And I would dance all night long, like with the Filipino mates and with my expat friends.
Yeah.
The next day, I would just smoke more meth and stay up all day, and then I'd go to work in the evening again. And I usually would do that for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 nights with no sleep.
Wow.
Which
so Chris, you started actually moving to Hong Kong for your own business, right? But that business went not successful after you arrived. So what happened once you were pretty much jobless? You started working for a trading company. Trading what kind of products?
It was DRAM computer chips, so memory chips from a computer. That was the first company.
Okay. And what kind of job did you do? Did you were like a salesperson for the foreigners or
I was taking on the role of salesman, international salesman. We used to make our own business cards, so it didn't really matter what we were. We just put, we'd put like the grand big super managing director of the whole wide world, Chris Thrall, super executive. We just would make it up, and because when you're dealing with sometimes up to $1 million worth of memory chips, you want the person you're dealing with to think you're an important person, so you're not going to put Chris Thrall, I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm rubbish.
Exactly. So
but it wasn't a problem though, Bob. It wasn't a problem because what am I saying? We were there for our white Western faces. In the old school Chinese mentality of our boss, who was very old school Chinese, he figured, if I've got Westerners and Europeans working in my office, when I get a customer comes in from, say, the Philippines or Thailand, they're going to think, wow, this is a multinational, conglomeration. This guy's really successful. It was all just for show. I didn't have to sell anything. I just had to sit there and drink lots of coffee.
It looked like a guilo, right? So,
yes.
Are you still in contact with the owner or the boss of that company after so many years? Did you ever catch him? Or?
I would imagine he probably died. Not necessarily, but probably died in the last 10 years. He was He was quite elderly when we worked there.
Okay, and most probably a chain smoker as well. And
I did hear though that the triad big brother, so Dilo, that's like means gang leader, that I work for in Wan Chai, that he's still down there because my friend saw him managing a nightclub the other day.
Oh, okay. But you've been back to promote your book Eating Smoke in
yes.
2011. So okay, how was that for you after bouncing from your Hong Kong experience, being back on the streets in Hong Kong? How did you feel? And did you go back to the same bar as well and meet these people or
It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I didn't want to leave Hong Kong, but I had to leave because the drugs were going to kill me. If the drugs didn't kill me, the triads would have killed me.
Yeah.
It was that simple. I was just messing with the wrong people, not intentionally. I wasn't a bad guy or anything, but I was getting iller and iller. And I was at, not just physically, but I was chronically mentally ill. And it wouldn't have been long before I could have killed myself or killed somebody else. And you don't want to do that when you work for the Hong Kong triads, right? So going back there was like going back to my home. You know, my Hong Kong is the only place in the world I ever felt like was my home.
Yeah.
I could speak the language more than any other Gweilo. I knew the back streets, the back alleyways. I had my friends, lots of Chinese friends, and I just loved it. It gutted me to leave, you know.
Yeah.
So when I went back, the first thing I did was retrace all of my old steps. So all my old haunts, starting with the building where I lived with my business partner, the little outbuilding that I talk about in Eat and Smoke that has now been, it was pulled down, but it was still all like I could see where I used to sleep.
Yeah.
I went to the nightclub, and yeah, that was quite hairy. I genuinely believed in my heart I would rock up there and it would be exactly the same people that it was, you know, 15 years before, or maybe it's 20 years before. I really just, I walked around the block like once, you know, just to make sure. You got to remember, like, I've written a book about these guys. I don't say anything in the book that you can't find on the internet. I didn't even use anyone's names. I used pseudonyms. So it wasn't, you know, but still, like, I'm kind of wary, and yeah. So I went in there and I just walked down those steps again, and I'm going to say I had some protection. I won't say what protection that was, but, you know, these are serious people. They're the most violent crime gang on the planet, right? And you got to always have a plan B, right?
Yeah.
But no, it was I didn't recognize anybody in there from my day. It was all a similar kind of setup. The funny thing was, their promotion video on the internet, A Night in Club Nemo, it was the same owner as when I was back there. Not the triad guy, but the owner, the civilian, the businessman that owned it, right? So not a triad. He was still in this video, and it was like, whoa. Oh. The saddest thing, Bob, was I would have paid a lot of money to be able to go back to the old apartment in the back streets of Wan Chai, this very old building I lived in that was crumbling and breaking down, right? It was only Chinese people in there, only. And one crazy Gweilo, right? I used to climb, because I always would get locked out. I'd forget my key or whatever. I'd have to climb out the window of the floor below and climb up the sewage pipe, you know, the toilet pipe.
Yeah.
I climb up it, and I'm 70 meters above the ground. I'm off my head on Class A drugs, and I climb up that. And no, I tell you what I do. I'd go out, I'd climb up to the roof, right? Up the emergency stairs, get out on the roof. Then I'd climb down this sewer pipe and get in my window, right? Yeah. There was no glass in the windows on any of that building. It had all been like, you know.
Yeah. So was it like this traditional Chinese walk-up building? Like 8 floors, no elevator. You have to.
There was an elevator, but it was about 20 floors.
Okay.
So when you were on the roof, and I spent a lot of time on the roof doing kung fu and just being a bit crazy, you look down at the street and the people were just tiny, you know.
Yeah.
I used to just climb around up there like a monkey, you know.
Oh yeah, crazy.
I should say, just in case anyone thinks I've said the wrong thing there. No, the landings of the building, so where you get out the elevator, that had no glass. Okay. It's just iron, like ironwork, you know, the metal, like this, like a nice pattern. The flat, I think, had had windows in. But yeah, the homeless people used to sleep on the stairs, on the emergency stairs. Yeah. And one guy had his own empire on the roof, built all out of packing crates.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the thing. I would have paid any money to go back there. I would have knocked on that door and said, hello, excuse me. I used to live here. Can I look? Because I went mad in that room, you know?
Yeah.
I went completely mad in that room, and it would have meant so much to go back and just, you know, I left Hong Kong mentally unwell. I went back as a best-selling author, you know, It was quite a special thing for me. But when I got there, they pulled it down. They had just pulled it down. And they put a new building up. I used to look for it on Google Earth, and I wondered why can't I find it? Why? I would have recognized the way the rooftop was set up, because it was three different levels, right? I would have recognized it on Google Earth, but I couldn't find it. And when I finally got to Hong Kong, like about a year later, they'd been building this skyscraper in that place.
Wow. So you were too late. So Chris, if we go back to, you know, working for the crazy trading company, this is exactly where you met the other Guilo, right? Where you initially then finally took your first hit on crystal meth. Can you describe the feeling you experienced on this toilet room with coworker?
Yeah. Well, so I went to take a leak in the toilet in the men's room, and I'm smelling this funny smell from the cubicle, and my friend came out. My friend Neil Diamond, I call him in the book.
Yeah.
And he came out and he said, Chris, come in. And he'd set up this crystal meth on a little piece of silver foil, and he was smoking it through a banknote, right? So he said, you want some? And I'm like, yeah, of course I want some. You know, I've heard about this drug. It sends people crazy. So of course I want some, you know? And yeah, I'm, you know, very glad I did, because it's led to me having an incredible life. But I don't recommend, you know, I always say to other people, you got to live your life, and I'm quite happy the way I've lived mine, thank you very much, you know. And I didn't feel anything, you know. I'd taken a few substances back in the UK because it was the dance era at the time, so it was a lot of house music and house parties, and there used to be raves. You could go to the countryside and go to big parties. It was an absolutely amazing time in many of our lives. So of course in Hong Kong, I'm going to try this drug. I've heard about it. I smoked this two smokes off this silver foil. I didn't feel anything. I went back, and if anyone's wondering, it looks like a little bit of ice, which is why they call it ice. It looks like the rock salt that you get at the dinner table, right? Look, a little bit of rock salt.
Yeah.
I went back to my desk thinking, well, that stuff's no good. And then within about 20 seconds, I'm just like this. Wow. I just felt more amazing than I ever had on any drug in my whole life. It was as if I was sipping fine champagne, but I wasn't feeling like that drunk, you know, that drunk feeling. I was just feeling that just so amazing that I knew there and then, the second the clock struck 7 o'clock, which is when we finished work at this company, we did 12-hour days. I was going to go over to Chungking Mansion, and I was going to find more of this drug. I was going to go and see my dealer guy over there, who was a Ghanaian immigrant. I think he ended up getting shipped off to a Chinese prison. I was going to go and see him because I I kind of had a feeling he could get me some of this stuff. When I got there, he didn't have any, but he only had heroin. So I'm so kind of addicted in my personality that I bought that stuff, you know. It wasn't a frightening experience to buy heroin because he had 2 teenagers in his room from the Hong Kong Island School, right? So they're about 16 or 17 years old. And I looked at them and I said, you know, what's this? They call it number 4 in Hong Kong. It's pure heroin from the Golden Triangle. It's not like the Afghanistan stuff that's brown and it gets messed about with by the time it gets to the UK. And then the dealers here mess about with it again. But over there, it's pure white powder. In fact, quite often travelers die having taken it because they try and buy cocaine, and the unscrupulous guy that's going to fix them up with this cocaine just goes and buys them this heroin because he knows they won't to look at it. It's a white powder, right?
Yeah.
You get these young guys go backpacking and they want to do some coke and they buy this stuff, and of course they snort a couple of big lines and they just stop breathing. You know, they go unconscious and they stop breathing, and the next day, you know, their family are going to have to try and get these bodies back home. It's a scam that they do, and it was done to me in Cambodia of all places. Okay. So so I took some of this China white home, this number 4, and I just smoked a bit on silver. It was never really my thing. I always felt a bit sleazy doing it, and it makes you want to be sick. And for me, it was nothing like the ice. Nothing like the ice. And the only time that number 4 was a good drug was when you'd been out all night in the club and maybe you'd done an ecstasy pill on top of your ice, and then you're sort of coming down the next day, and then wow, a lot of people would smoke the number 4 because you just come down in this beautiful way. You don't have this horrible kind of sketchy feeling, right? Yeah. I'm not, I just say it again. I'm not telling anybody to do drugs. I'm saying you live your life. This is my life. And, you know, I believe in just being completely honest, because if you fuck with drugs long enough, either you will die or a friend of yours will die. And it's happened to me 3 times now. Once through my best friend, one of my best friends drowned when we took acid, and 2 of my best friends have drunk themselves to death, and that's not nice. So I just believe in being truthful, and people can take that away and make what they want. You got to be careful around that stuff. You know, you got to know if you've got an addictive personality, which generally comes if you've had a bad childhood. You're probably gonna carry childhood trauma, and that's going to make you susceptible to addiction, because when you take these drugs, you feel so brilliant. You feel like the best guy in the universe, right? You really do. So you go from being a broken child carrying all this clutter in your head to suddenly feeling like you think everybody else feels this brilliant way. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to try buy more of that stuff the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And you're getting in the habit then of fixing all of life's problems with this amazing drug. And when you haven't got it, you feel awful, tired, depressed, demotivated. So how do you try and fix that? You try and buy more of this drug, right? So that's how a very basic way addiction works. Yeah. So that's how I felt taking it for the first time.
Yes. So, I mean, I guess it's a classic cycle, right? Where you use a little bit, and then you step by step you take more and more and more, right?
Yeah.
Was finally the drug use and the lack of sleep was that as well the reason for you of stopping working for the trading company?
I got fired from the trading company because I spoke Cantonese to the boss, and I was trying to be respectful.
Yeah.
And show, look, I'm a Guaylo, but I've been learning your language. Of course, I was being very naive because I'm not thinking, hang on, if he's got a Guaylo in the office that can understand the transactions that are taking place, I can then go off to a Guaylo company or my own company, which is actually what I was already doing, and I can steal his Cantonese business, right?
Yeah.
So when the next time I went back to the office, there was a letter stuck in my computer keyboard, and it said, "You're no longer needed to work here anymore." And that was like okay.
Oh.
Seems like I'm failing at everything. And do you know what? I just thought, I'm not going to take failure seriously. I'm just going to you can tell me I'm a failure as many times as you like. I know that I'm not, and that's all I care about. So I just went to the next job. That was crazy. That was selling advertisements in a business telephone directory.
Okay.
What the people that we would have to go to, say, Concord, British Telecom, AT&T, Cathay Pacific, you name it, all the biggest companies. We would have to get an appointment with the managing director, not the advertising guy, not the budget guy, the managing director, because he's the only person in a company that can sign an invoice, right?
Yeah.
So we would lie our asses off to get that appointment. It'd be, "Hiya, John. Yeah, Chris again. Yeah, how's the golf? Still got your handy? Oh, brilliant. Yeah, just want to touch base with you again about the advert that you ran with us last year. I'll be there. Can I come over at 3? And of course, this John, who's a captain of industry, is going, "Yeah, Chris. Yeah. Just come over at 3." And that was it. So you'd wander into these big, expensive office block. You'd say to the girl on the reception desk, "Hi, it's Chris. Appointment with John told me to come over at 3. Oh, okay, Chris. John, Chris is here for you." And that was it. You just lie to get in the office. Then you'd get your pen and you'd say, "Hey, John, what a great view you've got here. Anyway, look, I'm not going to take much of your time. If you just want to sign, we're going to run the glossy that you ran last year." You'd show them an advert that they had no idea that they'd run because they hadn't run it. What my company had done, it was called, I think I call it the East End Trading Company in my book or something. It's a pseudonym. It's not the company's real name, but basically the owner of that company had printed them up an advert that they didn't even know about, put it in his book with all their, details. It was always a fax number back in the day, right?
Yeah.
None of this email stuff. Phone number, fax number, address, glossy advert. It was all done on, they used to call it desktop publishing, which is before you had things like Photoshop and, Premiere Suites and this clever software. And so you'd flash John this advert, he'd go, oh, and you'd put the pen in his hand. And then he'd look at the pen and go, "Oh," and just sign your it's not an invoice, but it's the money you're going to charge them, which was a lot of money. Like we're talking about 4,000 Hong Kong dollars to 8,000 Hong Kong dollars, right?
Yeah.
And you got like 80% of that money. If you could get this deal, the company got 20%, something like that. But anyway, I tried that trick on a guy in Causeway Bay. He's a really nice guy. So it's like me meeting you, Bob, right?
Yeah.
And I'm coming into your company and I'm lying to you. we could be having a drink in Wan Chai together as best friends, and yet I'm there lying to your face like a criminal, right?
Yeah.
And it just happened that this guy in this company, they made all their own adverts, so he knew I was lying, right? He said,
Okay.
we didn't place that advert. Wait there, I'll go and get our invoices, right? When he went up this flight of steps to go and get the invoice to show, to show that we've never advertised with you, I ran from the building. And I felt rubbish, felt awful. So that evening I decided I'm not doing that again. I handed my notice in, and I took a job on Joe Bananas as a nightclub doorman.
Yeah.
And by this time and as a doorman, because I'm going to be up at night, I'm taking the crystal meth every night now, right?
So Joe Bananas is still there, right?
Yeah. I went in there.
Yeah. Still the same people? Did you meet the same management? Or?
Nothing similar.
Oh, yeah.
In 1995, if you went in a nightclub in Wan Chai, if it was an expat-owned nightclub, and most of them were owned by this kind of, we call it the Scottish mafia, but they weren't a crime family. They owned all the clubs in Hong Kong, right? Because the Scots go back historically to the old trading companies in Hong Kong, right? So Jardines and Matheson being a Scottish enterprise. So anyway, back then, you might get one Chinese face in a club, and they would be so scared to go in there, because you've got to remember, in Hong Kong culture, it's all about face and respect.
Yeah.
Well, they're going into a place where they're an ethnic minority. And I'm going to say this, and people can correct me, but I always got the feeling that they felt kind of insignificant around the Guilos. They felt like a bit second best.
Yeah.
It was like they wanted to try and fit in and be accepted and get face.
Yeah.
And if people don't understand face, that you're going to have to do some research, especially if you live in Hong Kong, because it's the most important.
It's everything.
There. It's more important than speaking the language if you want to understand local culture.
Yeah.
It's an extreme form of pride, and you never take that pride off somebody. If you do, you can expect retribution for the rest of your life. Something as Westerners we don't quite understand. So for a start, you might get like one very brave Chinese guy go in the club. When I used to see them as a doorman, I'd give them the entry stamp. I'd get them in like free of charge, because I knew how much respect I'm giving them,
Yeah.
So you get like one or two people in the club. Now it's like you get more Chinese people in the clubs than you do Guilos.
Yes.
It's completely different. All the staff in the club are Chinese.
Yeah.
It's just a very different place now,
Yeah. Dusk Till Dawn, was that place already there as well in your days?
Dusk Till Dawn. That was Joe Bananas. That was Rick's Cafe.
Ah, okay.
I think there's two clubs now right next to each other. I can't remember, but one of those ones was Rick's Cafe, and I bounced. I worked on the door in there.
Okay, yeah. So Joe Bananas, you worked as a bouncer, but that was not for the 14K yet, right, Chris?
No. That's a Guilo club.
Yeah, that's a Guilo club. But the club you work for the triad, that was Nemo, right?
Club Nemo, yeah.
Yeah. What was that? Was that the club close to Joe Bananas, next to the 7-Eleven now, where you have to go down?
Right. The one, I don't want to say which club it is, because it's obviously I've given it a pseudonym just to give me a little bit of protection, right?
Yeah, sure.
But the one next to the 7-Eleven is Big Apple. Okay. I can't remember the name of it now, but I did go in there when I went back.
Yeah.
And it's a very different place now. It was a very seedy club when I was there, so a very grungy, druggy club. You could go there and smoke joints in the club. Nobody ever said anything. You could snort cocaine off the table. It was probably the best nightclub I've ever been in my life. Just brilliant. I'm still friends with the manager now. He was an ex-army guy. I was ex-Marines, obviously, and we're still friends now.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Hey, Chris, during your commando training and during the moments, I would say in Hong Kong, right, while suffering and experiencing your lows, what made you never give up? And can you describe the conversations you had with yourself during these moments?
Yes, of course. As part of my challenging childhood, I think people can understand what I mean when I say a challenging childhood. So it wasn't always very nice, and I experienced things that no child should have to experience, right? Off the back of that, I've always been fiercely independent. Like, even as a young age, like when I was 4 and 5, if my grandmother tried to hold my hand to cross the street, I'd shake it off like that. It's like, get off me, get off me. Nobody tells me what to do or shows me what to do, or, you know, I hate that. I've always been like that. And another aspect of my character was my father. When he saw me going through some trouble with a stepdad that I used to have, he used to say to me, Chris, there's nothing wrong with you, right? And I got it. I got it right. Even when I was a teenager, I got what he meant. He meant, like, you know, most people are just nice people, but they get made to feel so shit by other people. In my day, parents just weren't very good. There were good parents, but many of them were just, you know, brainwashed robots that just did what their parents did. They had no sense of what a child's needs are, this kind of thing, right? So you could end up really getting your personality and your self-confidence destroyed by your parents, right?
Yeah.
But because my dad said this one thing, I just always clung to that like a rock before a waterfall. It's like, there's nothing wrong with me. So it didn't matter what happened to me in Hong Kong. What, you know, I took the drugs. I knew I was addicted. I knew it right from the start because I couldn't get home on the MTR. I'd get to Chim Sa Choi and then I'd be like, Chuk guy, you know, get out here. I'm going to go chunky mansions and get some more. I know it's wrong. Not wrong is not the right word, but I know it's dangerous. I know it could get me in prison, but I knew I was addicted and I knew I was in for a very long journey if I survived. And here's the thing, you know, you can either be a coward in life or you can be brave. And I always go for the brave because it's a lot easier to live with being brave than it is being a coward, right? And I used to just go, I'm in this journey for the long run, and that's just the way my life is. So get on and deal with it, you know. That was it. So
you always had the belief within that you are okay in these moments as well.
I did. I'm not saying it was like through my core that I believed it inside, but it's what I said to myself. Yeah. And it worked for me at the time. If you have to ask yourself the question, you know, why did I need to take so many drugs to feel good about life and to feel good about myself? Well, obviously I was very damaged very damaged up here. So obviously there's a big part of me that's been conditioned from a very young age. So from a baby to feel that I'm like a broken machine. I'm not a good person. I'm, you know, otherwise why would have people been so horrible to me when I was we say toddler, right? Like a infant, you know, this is the way the mind works, you know? So even you know, in my worst times in Hong Kong, I'm going to tell myself there's nothing wrong with me, even if maybe I don't even believe that 100%. I'm just going to say it and try to believe it. And I did believe, well, I'm still here, aren't I? You know, I'm still here. And, you know, yeah, I'm still here.
Quite well as well, isn't it? You're doing an amazing stuff, and we can speak about it now and your experience. But for sure, I can understand in these moments, you need some mental toughness as well, right? To keep believing in yourself and to these moments.
It's also that it's survival. I mean, what other option did I have? I had to work because I didn't have any savings. Hong Kong is an expensive place to live. So, you know, I had to make at least 10,000 Hong Kong dollars a month. And this is 20 years ago, right? In this day and age, that's going to be what, 30,000 maybe, right? You have to make that a month. There's no, you can't sign up for benefits over there, or
nope.
The living spaces is so cramped.
Yeah.
It's not like your friend can let you, you know, put your tent in his back garden or sleep in his garage or give you his spare room. You don't have that in Hong Kong, you know? So a lot of it was survival. I had to survive there, you know, I had to make it work. If my dad, my father, hadn't bought me a ticket home right at the end, and I didn't want to go, I didn't want to get on that plane. But if he hadn't done that, my next step was homelessness, because I had no money. And then I would have had to been, you know, shoplifting for food and trying to get the drug anyway, you know, any way that I could.
Yeah.
I'm lucky it didn't get to that stage.
Yeah. So your father, he plays a big part in his phrase that there's nothing wrong with you, and you know, buying an airplane ticket in these moments. That's huge. So what made him decide to buy the airplane ticket? In these days, no Skype, no FaceTime, any of that. Were you close during these days? You had phone calls on a weekly basis, or
no, not at all. I've always, you know, boys are close with their father, right? So that's not to say that our relationship wasn't very difficult over the years. Some very tough stuff there, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, he's your father and you love them, and you try to understand why. With anybody, you know, you've got to understand, why is a person like this? If you can't work that out, then you take it on board yourself, and it becomes baggage for you. If you can't work out, no, this is not me, this is that person, right? So I kind of, you know, I took the best bits of what my dad taught me and forgot or forgave the rest, I suppose, is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I always, when I was traveling around the world in the Marines, I'd be like in Bangkok, I'd arrive in Bangkok just in a shorts and t-shirt and go to the nearest bar and get drunk, and I call my dad, I love you. And he didn't get it. He's like really old school. He never ever would say I love you. He'd never give you a kiss or a hug. That's just like, he don't get any of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And as such, he's one of the few people I kept in touch with when I needed to speak to someone. So I called him about maybe no more than 10 times in the year that I lived in Hong Kong. And when things got really bad, I called him about 3 times, but he couldn't understand what I was saying on the phone because I was very ill. And I kind of believed this big conspiracy was going on around me, not just the triads, which is obviously a conspiracy. I felt pretty sure a lot of the expats were kind of in their own triad. And I know that there was one at the time. But also I thought there's a big global conspiracy going on. And like, I'm the last guy to the party. I haven't like worked out how to get into this club. It was like a big club to me. And so of course my dad's listening to his phone call, and he's panicking. I'm not making sense. I'm talking like in code language because I don't want people listening on the phone to understand what I'm saying, but my dad's obviously not understanding. And this went on for like, 3 months. My dad is not the kind of person that's going to jump on an aeroplane. He just, it's all alien to him, right? So he called a policeman friend of his. The policeman had been in Hong Kong for 20 years as a policeman. And he said, can you help me? My son's in some sort of trouble. We think he's been kidnapped or something. So the policeman made some inquiries with his colleagues in Hong Kong. And the police chief in Hong Kong said, oh yeah, we know your friend's son. Everybody in Hong Kong knows your friend's son, That's because my behavior had become so bizarre. I had so many run-ins with the police. We always had to carry an ID card in Hong Kong. I'm sure it's the same now, so the police always would take your ID card when they stop you and this kind of thing. And so that's how my dad became involved. I had a chat with him on the phone and I let him speak to my friend who was called Ron, old Ron in my book. I'm still in touch with Ron now.
Yeah.
And Ron just said to my dad, he said, Edward, Chris is just not very well. He's not himself. He's behaving very, very bizarrely and he needs to come home, And that was it. My dad didn't even ask. He bought me an air ticket, told me he bought an air ticket. And when I asked myself, why am I staying? I've got no money. I've got no job. Every bridge that I've been over is burned behind me. Maybe I should go back just for 3 months or something. I'll get my strength back. I'll get down the gym and get big again and get a job to save up the money for the air ticket. Then I'll be straight back. I loved that life. I loved it. But then, of course, I was also high on crystal meth all the time. So, that kind of is a false enhancement of the love. I couldn't have stayed, Bob. I couldn't have handled it,
Yeah. And so going back to working as a doorman for the triads, in a way, in that moment, they saved you as well, right? They gave you the job. They gave you the opportunity to make some money.
They gave me the job, but then they fired me from the job because I became too crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm probably one of the very few Westerners that got fired from the Hong Kong triads because my behavior was too crazy.
Yeah.
Normally the other way around, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I was down on my luck. It was the last job. It was the second to last job. I was actually a teacher, was my last job. I was a school teacher, which is quite crazy. That was, people just have to read my book for that story, but it was fun. I love teaching those children. They love me because I was their crazy Guaylo teacher. And I used to just give them experiences no other teacher, not a Westerner or an Asian, would ever give them, and we had some fun. But I walked into Club Nemo looking for a friend to see if my friend knew of any jobs going. He'd gone to Thailand, my friend. And the owner of that club, who, like I say, was a Dilo, so a gang leader for the 14K, said, you want a job? You can do doorman job? Okay, start here tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. That's what he said to me. I remember it like yesterday. And that was it. So tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, I rocked up there and I'm back in work. And I'm not just back in work, but as I'm soon to find out, I'm working for the 14K, Hong Kong's most violent triad gang. And I'll be honest, it felt good, It felt compared to being homeless and sitting on my backpack, which I was several times in Hong Kong, only for 1 or 2 days each time. But compared to that, I was in a much better place, or at least I thought I was.
Exactly. So I mean, reading your book, and I mean, learning as well, that was one of these moments where you realize that, yeah, shit hits the fan, right? When you were on the rooftop, trying to climb from your building to the other one, using an electric rope or one of the cables you have from the rooftop to the other one.
Yeah.
That was a fascinating story as well. So you had a moment of clarity while you were climbing on the cable, right?
Yeah. So I'm in my mind, I'm so mentally unwell now that I believed if I could crawl across that cable, which went from my building to the building on the other side of the Jaffe Road. It wasn't an electric cable, by the way. It was actually a water pipe.
Okay.
Because a lot of homeless people live on the roofs in Hong Kong, right? So I'm crawling across that. It's a wire, and it's got the water pipe plasticuffed to the wire every sort of 12 centimeters or something, right? I was going to say 12 inches, but that's, we've got to talk metric. So every 15 centimeters, there's a plastic. It doesn't matter, but just some people might think, well, what the hell is a wire doing, you know, going between two buildings? But there's all kinds of crazy arrangements when you go up on those rooftops. You'll see
illegal structures. It's all right.
You will see a whole world you never knew existed.
Yeah.
And when you're up there, you see the whole of Hong Kong Island. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. You see the mountains behind you. That's feng shui. That's why all the buildings face the sea, feng shui. That's to get rid of the evil spirits. And you have the ocean in front of you for prosperity, right?
Yeah.
That's why in Hong Kong restaurants, they have the fish tank in the window. If the restaurant isn't pointed towards the sea, they have the fish tank for good luck, right? So, I'm trying to crawl across this cable. In my mind, if I can do my commando crawl that I was taught in commando training, and I can get across to the other side of this building, like, I'm going to get all the answers in life. I'm just going to bang. In that moment, I'm going to find out who I am, what I'm about, what this crazy cult organization that's occupying my mind. Is it to do with the triads? You know, and I thought everything was going to come true. I really believed it. Like, you know, we used to have a program in the UK called This Is Your Life. Maybe you had the same. The guy had a red book, and he would just walk up to somebody on the street or in their work and go, so-and-so, you are, you know, Chris Thrall, you're a former Royal Marine, and tonight, Chris, this is your life. And then they take that person to the TV studio, and one by one, all the people from their life would come through the door. It's a very powerful program, a very, very scripted, of course, but very emotional, you know, to see like your school teacher that you haven't seen for 30 years, to, you know, your first girlfriend, you're this, you're that, they'd all come and say what a wonderful person you are. And this is kind of like what I thought would happen if I get across this cable. I'm going to just find all my answers, right? And I got a little bit out on that cable, and I'm swinging above the traffic, and it just thought to me, you know, this cable could just snap. I didn't put this cable. I have no idea. You know, it's not for taking people. It's for carrying this little pipe of water. That's all, right? What am I doing? What am I doing? And why am I doing it? And then I thought about my brother back home, who I love very, very much. And, you know, he's my brother, and we've always been very, very close because of our family, you know, our parents getting separated quite a lot when we were young. And I'm thinking, hang on, like, I miss him. I haven't spoke to him for 1 year. I miss him. He's who I love, not these triads and not these expats that are laughing at me. And who cares if there's some global agenda or some cult, or, you know, who cares? Or it's kind of like the Illuminati. You know, if you know about the Illuminati, this is how I was feeling back then, except that what I was feeling back then probably wasn't real. Whereas, as we know now, this whole Illuminati thing seems to be very, very real. But anyway, I'm thinking of my brother, and I just start crying, you know, and I'm like, I don't have to do anything for anybody in this world, just him, you know. I'm just crying on this wire, and the tears are they're just dropping through the air, and they're going 70 meters down. You know, it was quite a memorable scene, and I just crawled my way backwards off this wire. Had nervous breakdown, which was probably about my third nervous breakdown by this time. I didn't know what a nervous breakdown was. I'm guessing that when you can't take any more and you still love yourself, that's what I felt, you know, that's what I felt. And that was it. And about, you know, within like 3 weeks after that happened, I was on the plane going home, having got fired by the triads and having got the job as a school teacher.
Yeah. So then being back in the UK, it must have been challenging as well. I assume, of course, we know it. But at the same time, I guess it saved your life as well, right? Flying back.
It depends. It's hard to say what's going to kill you. You either die or you don't. And if you don't, you can't like think, well, what if, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
A bit like when people say, do you know the bus that I was going to get on crashed and everybody died? I was nearly on that. It's like, well, you weren't on that bus, so shut up. You know, like you either are or you're not, right? So
yeah.
What I mean by that is my problems, my perceived problems began back in England. And the reason for that is while I was in Hong Kong, I was off my face every day. Despite the fact that, yeah, I nearly died and it was upsetting. A lot of people turned their back on me and I got fired from almost every job I had. And like I said, I was sitting on my backpack, homeless for, you know, like about three times during my time there. You know, despite all of this, it was still one hell of an experience, you know.
Yeah.
When I got back to the UK, it was fine. Once the meth had left my system and the craziness left with the meth, it was sunny, it was summer, it was a beautiful place to be in England in the summer. It was okay, you know, for a few days, but I was bored. I wanted to be in Hong Kong. My family kept saying, hey, aren't you glad you're back? And I'm like, fuck off, am I glad? How if you spend 5 minutes in Hong Kong as an expat and you could experience you'd never ask me, am I happy to be in England? It's horrible here. It's boring. It's mundane. The people are boring. There's no nightclubs that stay open all night. There's no food on the corner. You can just eat when you want. There's no foreign voices. You know, there's no underground that will just take you anywhere you want in the whole, you know, in the whole place in 15 minutes, you know. There's no triads giving you a job. I hated it, you know. Well, I didn't hate it. I just knew something was missing. And then, of course, I started taking the drugs again because deep down, I'm really unhappy. And I took amphetamine then for 18 months. I mean, habitually, like every time I could get it, I would get it, but I didn't have much money to buy it. So I could only get it and stay high for 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Then I would crash into the biggest depression you can imagine. I was just completely clinically depressed for the rest of that fortnight until I got my money again, which was only, I was getting like benefits. It was, let's say, $100 a fortnight. So it was barely enough to buy food. And yet I'm funding my my house, my bills, my food, and my drugs. And of course, I didn't have money to stay high all the time, so I would crash, and I put myself through this cycle for 18 months, by the end of which my house was smashed up. Everything was just so filthy in that house, just, you know, because I treated my house like a workshop. So anything I was doing, I did in the house. Like, so if I'm fixing my car, I bring part of the engine into the house, and I'm just chaotic. You know, I'm chaotic in my mind. Probably still am a bit, but so my house ended up a complete mess. I lost all my friends because they just, you know, people didn't know about drug problems back then. They didn't know how to deal with it. And I don't blame them, you know, for not wanting to be around me. I kind of wish they kept in touch and just said hi, and yeah, I did that for 18 months. And
so Chris, I mean, the friends from these days, right? It's some time ago already. Did they turn around? Are you in contact with them now? Now they know your story, and or
one of them was kind of part of my salvation.
Yes.
And we've always been in touch, and his name is, he's the book that Eat and Smoke is dedicated to. So he did stay in touch, which helps say, you know, when someone will come into your life just at the right time, if you keep your eyes open, you'll see that person, and you'll know this is the person who's come to rescue me, you know, or they don't rescue you, but they're just a part of your rescue, right?
Yeah.
My other friends just came back at the right time when it was right for all of us. And we're all friends to this day. I think none of them really understood what I was going through. A lot of people read my book and it really upsets them because, you know, I didn't write it for therapy or anything like that. I had one goal of writing Eat and Smoke. I wanted to be a best-selling author, and I wanted to be famous, right?
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
Because I was young. I was still, I mean, when I wrote Eat and Smoke, I was 38. So I still felt young, right?
Yeah.
Still, I'm 50 now. I still feel young. But at 38, you know, my ego was still unchecked. I didn't understand being spiritual. I didn't understand ego. I wanted to make my name. You know, I'd seen more of the world by this stage than anybody I'd ever met.
Yeah.
I'd achieved more of my goals than anybody. I traveled the world. I'm a pilot. I'm a skydiver. I'm going to be an Antarctic polar explorer, a university graduate, written a best-selling book, and yet I couldn't pay my bills, you know. Nobody wanted me in a job. I couldn't even get a job in the supermarket stacking the shelves. I had nothing to offer. I'd not done that before. You know, maybe I could get a job in a pub, but do you really want to do that every single night? So no, I set about making my dream come true. I'm still making my dream come true. It gets incredibly better every day, to the point where I can live like this. You know, this is just I can sit here with a cup of tea and chat to a wonderful person and share my story and also learn. I mean, this has been a one-way conversation, but then you invited me on your podcast, so I would like to ask you some stuff about Hong Kong as well. But yeah, no, I that's why I wrote Eat and Smoke. I can't remember the point I was trying to make, just that I didn't write it for therapy or anything like that. No. When I went back to Hong Kong and I went through the airport at Heathrow, my book was like number 12 bestseller. And then when I up with all the celebrities, when I landed in Hong Kong, my book was number 2 bestseller there, you know?
Yeah, I think I picked up your book when I was in Hong Kong. I think it was, I guess, 2011. Most probably traveling as well. bought it on the airport, and yeah, I was intrigued by it from the very first page. It's a very inspiring story as well, Chris. Now, of course, we know the aftermath, right? You have bounced, you have turned your life around, and it's very inspiring to all of us, right? Learning your story.
I try to encourage people, because obviously I teach a lot of people now about, you know, I get young people approach me and they're not so happy in their life, and I try to coach them. I've got sort of 80 people that I do that for, and then of course I've got a big YouTube channel. A YouTube channel that's growing bigger, and I try to say to people, like, I never turned my life around. I lived my life, you know.
Yeah.
Because to turn it round sounds like I was going in a wrong direction, and I never was. You know, I might have bent society's rules, but if you play by society's rules, I'm not talking just about the drugs here, you're never going to find happiness.
Yeah.
Because you got these rich corporations controlling you. They control everything. They control the media that you watch. They control your computer software. They control your mobile phone. They control the advertisements you see. They control the programs you watch. They control your education system. They control your employer. They control everything, right? And it's not until you learn to shake all that off and see life for what it really is that you can truly be free. And that's where I am now. I'm constrained by certain things, of course, because I live in society. I don't live in a house in the woods, right? Maybe I will, but it's possible to be free in shackles, believe it or not, when you learn how to control your mind. And how did I get this freedom? How did I learn that most people in life are just controlled from child? Do you know even the number in your passport? That is you are stock on the stock market from that number. A lot of people don't know this. You know, you are just a commodity to these psychopaths that control the whole planet. Funnily enough, the people that I was thinking existed when I was crazy in Hong Kong, now that I'm like completely sane, well, I don't know if an ex-Marine you can ever be completely sane, but now that I'm, you know, completely sane and sober, now I realize actually they do exist.
Okay.
And they're not very nice people, you know, they're not very nice. When you're born into money and you can have as much money as you want from birth, that is never an issue for you. You can buy 100,000 Ferraris when you're 1 year old. That's, you know, you can buy any person you want, any girlfriend you want. You can buy the body you want. You can buy the home you, right? When you have anything, then money ceases to become, and everybody that you know, so all the other sons and daughters of the psychopaths, they also have this. Then it doesn't become impressive. It doesn't give you, you know, it doesn't give you a goal in life to work hard because you might be successful and rich one day, right?
Yeah.
So instead, they turn their goal to controlling society. They get their sick pleasure from, you know, corrupting our young people, corrupting us as adults through a sick diet. You know, I don't eat Western diet, and I haven't done for 18 years now.
So how do you define a Western diet? What diet are you on?
We've been sold a way of eating. We've been sold a way of eating that is so far from our hunter-gatherer ancestors that what it does, it fills you with it creates acid in your blood, which your body then cannot get rid of quick enough. Because the diet is not realistic. You know, when you're a hunter-gatherer, you wouldn't eat a cow every single day. A, because there probably weren't cows where you lived. B, because the cow would probably turn around and killed you because they're violent animals, right? And you've got a stick, right? Okay, I know we've got clever in the last 10,000 years maybe, right? But we've been around, that's like that. We've been around this many, since the time began, our evolution began. Whenever that first microbe formed in a swamp, that is us, right? So we spent so much of our life as hunter-gatherers picking vegetables in the nature, picking nuts, berries, not even fruit, unless you live in a place where there's loads of fruit trees, and there's not even loads of fruit trees in Africa. I've lived and worked in Africa. They're seasonal. They come once a year, right? And so what happens is, because we eat an unrealistic diet, so we go for massive amounts of animal flesh, right? If you had the choice as a hunter-gatherer of eating raw animal flesh or nuts, berries, and roots and you'd go for the nut, because raw animal flesh is horrible. It's only because through a complete accident of our history, we learn how to use fire. And that's quite recently in our time scale. And if we heated the meat, it burned it. And then that made it taste succulent and nice and tasty, right?
Yeah.
That is not a reason alone to eat meat, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and so what I did is I simply just, like many people do now, I try to eat like my evolution, right? And that simply means your plate has to be 2/3 of green vegetables or other alkaline producing food. You can Google this and get a list on the internet. It's very simple, really simple. I've done that for 17 years now. So if you try and scare me with this coronavirus hoax, right, which is what it is, I'm going to laugh in your face, because I haven't been ill for 17 years and I don't plan on getting ill now. When your body's alkaline, you cannot get sick. You're not getting arthritis. You're not getting heart disease. Cancer cannot grow in an alkaline body. It physically cannot, right? That's why you don't see animals in the nature getting cancer and going to hospital for 20 years of their life, right? Stupid. Stupid, because we've all been brainwashed by these sickos that own the corporations that hate us because we're just a commodity and a passport. And play their sick games at, let's put fluoride in their water, right? Let's have a pharmaceutical industry that gives them this fake medication that is contributing to actually them dying younger, because it's full of poisons and toxins and heavy metals in the medication, right? Whereas you do what I say, right? Go alkaline for a month, all of your illnesses will disappear. I promise you. You can write to me if it doesn't happen, right? There might be, if you've got some damage, like I've got spine damage from being in the Marines, that can't go away because it's actual, the bones are all, but you put like dairy product in your body, you're putting the wrong type of calcium in. So that what it does is it sticks to your bones in the wrong places, and you get arthritis, and you get these hands that are just horrible and deformed, right? It's Western diet, right? Sorry, we've gone on a bit of a side, but do you know what? It's so important.
It's an interesting topic. I'm intrigued with it as well.
If you want to be free, please do it. Please investigate. Please stop believing. Turn the news off and never watch it. All they do is lie to you, right? At the moment, what they're not telling you is everyone that dies in hospital has to be coronavirus. Has to be, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? They didn't die of corona. My friend died the other day. Do you know why he died? He died because he was old. He died because he's had degenerative illness from his Western diet that he's had his whole life. Instead of a natural diet, his body broke down and he ended in a wheelchair, and he died because he got old. That's it.
Yeah.
They can't put that, they're not allowed to put that on the death certificate. They have to put coronavirus. Don't ask me why, because my partner was asking the partner of this guy that died, why? She said they have to, right? So you're being lied to. All these statistics.
Yeah.
It's You know,
Chris, are you, I mean, you're a very active guy now as well. Are you using any special supplements, multivitamins or any
um,
in addition to your diet?
no, only because I don't have enough time in my day to sit down and go, right, let's do the research that you need to do before you take anything into your body, right?
Yeah.
Right? People say, I take zinc. Well, you know, the supplement industry is a whole thing again, right? It's a whole corporation, it's a whole business.
Mm.
So I haven't got the time it takes to research. So I just stick to what I know works for me. I never get sick. So I figure my body's probably in quite a good place, right?
Okay.
I exercise, you know, I'm not obsessive with it, but I do a lot of endurance challenges. And so I'll like go and get fit for 1/3 of the year or whatever. The only extra thing I take is green powder.
Okay.
People watching, if you type green powder into a search engine or super greens,
Yeah.
you can find it. It's very expensive if you buy it from the mainstream companies. You have to look around and look around, and finally you'll be able to get a kilo for something like $3 really cheap. Or what I do is I buy the mix myself. If people want to join my Patreon platform, I talk all about this. You know, it's too much to cover, but I buy it all in separate containers and I mix it up. So it's like wheatgrass, barley grass, pea protein, spinach, powdered spinach.
Right.
There's another one. It's spirulina, so the very dark green.
Yeah, green. Yeah. So
what that does is it cheats your body.
yeah.
So say one night you eat a big steak and chips, so that's really
Heavy.
that creates acid in your system, right?
Yeah.
In the morning you can have I have a big liter jar on the, you know, the NutriBullet, so the blender.
Yeah.
A NutriBullet, a load of vegetables, just only green veg. Fruit doesn't work. Fruit is full of sugar.
Yeah.
Natural sugar called fructose, but that our ancestors wouldn't have lived on fruit because it's seasonal, right?
Yeah.
Seasonal. They would have eaten it when it was in season, yeah, but they wouldn't have just eaten that. They would have I hope I made my point, but anyway, I will have a liter of green powder and green vegetables every morning, because then if I want to eat a bit of fish with my partner for our evening meal one night, and I feel guilty because fish is very acidic, right?
Yeah.
I balance it off the next day by having the greens, you know?
Yeah. And the intermediate fasting, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I fasted. My first fast, I did 18 days. So
okay.
I just drank water for 18 days, nothing else.
Wow.
I lost, I didn't do it for weight loss. I did it for my mental health and my physical health, right? But I did actually lose 28, 30, 28, 30, 44
kilos.
44 pounds, 24 kilos. It's 3 stones in imperial, right? And
Okay.
it's 14 pounds in a stone, I believe.
Okay. So that's,
and a kilo is 2 pounds. So if
correct.
It's 44 pounds, it's like I lost like 22 kilos, right?
Oh, yeah.
In 18 days.
Wow.
My mental health just became perfect. My trauma for many years just disappeared.
So the fasting, it helped you to get clarity and to overcome some mental difficulties you were experiencing, Chris?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's a combination, you know, getting your mental health right is a combination of lots of things, and it's not something you do once and it just happens. You've got to work at it every day. Yeah. Biggest one is the way you talk to yourself, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, in 2018, I ran the length for the United Kingdom. I did no training for it. I just put on a 14-kilo backpack with my camping gear, flew up to John O'Groats, which is the northern tip of the United Kingdom. Then I ran non-stop to Land's End in the south, 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
And I slept at the side of the road, you know, when I got tired. And, you know, I did no training. And a lot of people are like, what? And I just tell you, anybody can do that. The difference between me and other people is they decide they can't. It's that simple. I did no training, so how can I be a Superman? I did no training, you know, so it's got to be up here, right?
And you finished the what, it was 1,000 miles, right? So you finished the 1,000-mile with a broken leg as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's an element in the story which is impressive for sure.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I will say in the defense of pain, I did take painkillers when I broke my leg. Had what we call in the military a shin splint. So it's a stress fracture. And it was incredibly painful to the point, well, you can't run. I had 500 miles left to run, so about 800 kilometers. And I'm not going to fail. I can't fail, right? And you can't run 800 kilometers with a broken leg. It's just too much pain. So I took some painkillers and I drank some rum. And I don't suggest anybody does that, but I'm just going to like live my life my way, right?
Yeah.
And so I managed to do I wanted to do an ultra marathon every day or have it average an ultra marathon every day. So anything over 26.2 miles. And I averaged about 28 miles a day.
Wow. One
day, the second to last day, I ran 43 miles non-stop. Like I say, carrying a 14-kilo backpack. And how can I do that? Well, I do it because I eat the right food and I talk to myself in the right way. And anybody can do that. But 95% are just going to choose, I'm going to eat Western diet. I don't just mean McDonald's. I mean, you know, your chicken and your potatoes that's...
No milk products, I assume?
No, I haven't drank milk for, 17 years when I started this diet. Yeah. We have a little bit of cheese just as a
treat.
You know, just as a treat. But it's like I say, the thing about the alkaline diet, if you're 2/3 green, 2/3 alkaline, it cancels out the third of the acid producing food. It just does. I've done it 17 years, you know. I normally have on my desk, because I talk about this a lot, some strips they call pH strips.
Yeah.
It's a little stick. You put it in your mouth and lick it. And then the color the stick goes, it tells you how alkaline your system is. Most people will be acidic when they do that test because they eat the Western diet. Americans will be even worse than Europeans because they don't eat like any vegetables, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And, and they eat a lot as well. Hey, Chris. So what advice would you give a 20-year younger version of yourself?
By that stage, you know, I got asked that for an interview I did with CNN in Hong Kong, actually, I think it was.
Okay.
I just said, you know, buy the ticket, take the ride. Don't do anything different, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
You know, if I had done anything different, I wouldn't have my son now. He's like the best son in the universe. And I don't want the second best son. I want him. I love him, you know. And
how old is he?
He's 5 now.
Okay, that's a fun.
But he's going on like 15.
Okay.
He's he likes to beat me up, and he does beat me up really quite badly. And I thought it was clever teaching him how to fight, and now I'm teaching him like not to fight because it's hurting me. It hurts so much. He's really good at football. He's just a great kid, and you know, I'm every night when I kiss him goodnight, I'm just so lucky. You know, I'm so lucky to. You know, I'm so lucky. I've lived the perfect life, and living the perfect life doesn't mean you don't have to overcome challenges. Of course you do. There's never not going to be challenges, because the challenges teach you who you are and what you want and how to get what you want. And yeah, I'm just lucky. So my 20-year-old self, I'd just say, keep being you.
Yeah. You have an extraordinary story, Chris, and it might be a hard one for yourself, right? But I guess it leads you as well to having this platform, you know, being the host of your own podcast and YouTube channel, and you're helping most probably a lot of people by by being such an inspirational guy, right? So
Yeah, I mean,
thank you for that.
Bob, people need to know we are all born beautiful. It's that simple. We need to remember that at every single stage in our lives. Mother Nature, the universe, God, whatever you choose to call this amazing thing that we live in, or this spirit, you know, loves you as much as everything else. We are all equal. And if you choose to go through life not feeling equal, that's your choice. It's because you haven't chosen to work out, you know, sometimes it's a challenge to work out who we are and why we're here. And sadly, a lot of military people at the moment, they don't work it out, and they kill themselves. It's an epidemic in the UK now. We've lost this year already probably about 200 veterans have killed themselves. And it doesn't need to be that way. It's just because you got to stop believing what you see in society. Society doesn't love you. It just wants to control you and steal your freedom and steal your dream. You've got to step out of the matrix. Watch the film The Matrix. If you know, watch Loose Change 9/11. That's a great documentary to start to get you to understand you've been lied to your whole life. And you need to get out of that. You know, you need to be free. Every day I smile at the sun, because that is nature telling me I'm a part of this. I'm equal to a rock, but I'm equal to a president or a king. We're all the same, you know. You've got to have ultimate love for yourself. If you don't love yourself, that's because you need to forgive yourself for something, right? Or forgive other people's behavior. I always say, you know, if you got a pot of marbles, you know, these little balls, you keep your marbles in your pot, right? You don't take them and you put them in other people's. How are you ever going to be happy doing that? That means they've always got you, you know, they've always got you like that. You don't do that. You don't have hate. You don't have envy. You don't have bitterness. You don't have jealousy. If you do, you calm it down, you know, just calm it down. We're human. We got natural reaction, right? But you recognize it and you calm that one down, do the love, do the kindness, do the reaching out to wonderful people like you, Bob. I can tell you're a nice guy, you know. You just got that energy about you, right? And that's it. I always say you get one life. If you live it right, one is enough, you know.
Beautiful said, Chris. I mean, I appreciate you a lot. I'm just randomly reaching out to you, and you were so kind of accepting my invitation, right? So I will be always thankful for that. And is there anything else I missed asking you? Is there anything you would like to share?
No, you've been wonderful. I just encourage anyone, go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I'm not going to tell you shit. What I mean is I'm not trying to make money off you or make you feel bad or pretend that I'm great. I'm not. I'm just like you. I'm just a normal, very normal person. But what I do is I tell the truth on there. It's not what everybody wants to hear, you know. Yeah, I tell the truth about my experience of life. And so I'd encourage anyone to go to youtube.com, Chris Thrall. I do the Instagram and the Twitter and everything. I'm just Chris.Thrall on Instagram. Sign up to my Patreon if you want kind of like my life coaching. I do it on there for free. It's only £2 a month, so $3 American a month. I can't make it any cheaper than that because, you know, if people don't invest in their own lives, it's no point trying to help them, right? You know?
True.
You know, if people give you stuff for free, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, that's true. I will put all the links from all your platforms as well in the podcast description. So I'm sure people will find you as well, Chris. And again, a big thanks. I'm really grateful you've taken the time and we managed to speak. And
yeah, it's been amazing, Bob.
And
thank you ever so much. I'm feeling sad that, you know, for podcasts, I like to have an exchange, but it's kind of podcasting is not as easy as you think, is it? You know, people probably think it's just two guys talking, but there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
For a start, you've never met the person that you're speaking to. You don't know what they're like, how they talk, whether they're going to interrupt you all the time. And I probably do that, and I'm sorry. It's just, you know, just so much to say. And but I like the kind of exchange, two guys talking. When I do that on my podcast, people are like, why didn't you let that guy speak? And I'm like, because I'm not a chat show. I don't want to be a chat show. But I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe we can, next time we do this, we talk about your Hong Kong story.
Yeah, I would love to.
You know, and what did you like about Hong Kong? What did you notice the culture? Because it's quite amazing. When you get under the skin, it's a different place, you know, it's a different place. Yeah. I would talk about that now, but I've got another appointment. So I apologize if it's just been me, but you know. Yeah,
no worries, Chris. We could do it again. Let's do it again in some time. I would love to share more about my experience. I've been there for 10 years. Did
you say you're in the UK now?
No, I'm in Rotterdam now.
Okay.
I'm in Rotterdam now. So that's where I'm originally from.
What do you do there, if I'm allowed to ask?
I'm in shipping, actually, and that was for me the reason to go to Hong Kong in 06, 07. So the chips you were producing and shipping all around the world, I've been managing these for 10 years or so. So yeah.
God, it's bringing back memories. I looked into shipping a lot when I was there because I was going to ship stuff back to the UK, and I learned all about the paperwork that you can do. I still used to have the books. You could buy books on how to do the paperwork and how you get a container and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
well, I hope to see you in the Netherlands one day.
Hey, anytime when this crazy Corona time is over and you plan traveling and visit the Netherlands, Amsterdam, Rotterdam. Give me a ring. Will be cool to catch up, right? Show you around.
Definitely. And the same if you're ever in the south of the UK. I won't say where I live, but I'm in the south. It's no secret anyway. But stop saying it now because you start to meet an awful lot of people through podcasting. You know,
okay.
And not all of them are the most well balanced. But
yeah. Alrighty, cool. Thanks.
All right, Bob.
And have a good day. And I'm sure we keep in touch. And we speak soon.
That'll be brilliant. Take care, my friend. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.